Good afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar titled Keys to Success. Start with a Great Mentor, an in-training webinar brought to you by In Alliance. Our in-training webinars are brought to you by In Alliance are typically 30 minutes in length with 15 minutes of question and answer at the end of the session. All our webinars are free to attend. They typically start at 1:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Please check out our schedule of upcoming trainings at www.inalliance.biz. Click on the In Training tab and you can view upcoming webinars, as well as click on the Past Training tab and you can view past webinars that we've had previously. Today, I would like to go over just quickly some housekeeping issues so that you can engage at your leisure with the webinar. Like I mentioned, I will be giving a presentation for roughly 30 minutes. At the end of that time, I will be asking questions. If you use your GoToWebinar panel, you can type in the question, and I will, of course, reread the question so that everybody in attendance can hear that and answer it accordingly. And then also you can click on your speaker and ask to be have an audio question with me, and I will get, of course, answer your question at that time also. If you have any questions past this webinar, my contact information is in front of you. This slide will also be at the conclusion of the seminar so that you can follow up with me at your leisure. Also, for joining us today, you will be emailed a copy within 48 hours of the of this session so that you can view it in future use or share it with your friends. We've spent several webinars over the past few weeks engaging our audience with how to develop youth entrepreneurship programs in rural America. We've looked at a variety of ways of identifying what children are typically make good entrepreneurs and who want to pursue a self-style. And we often find that it's a very small percentage that actually has the ability and wherewithal to actually engage in business activities. In fact, we find that often the percentage is sometimes 1% of the population. So with that in mind, we are targeting a very small audience, but a very engaging audience that needs a lot of guidance and help. And from that perspective, we have to look at the mentor relationship with youth. But putting it very simply, in North America and really the planet-wide, if a child does not have access to mentors, a mentor or mentors in a variety of ways, their business idea will fail, and that's something that you need to keep in mind. So the mentors are actually what we call the super weapon of the kids' business concept. Just by way of a statistic, 70% of current U.S. Fortune 500 companies have a formal mentorship program. The program in North America is just now catching hold, and when I say catching just now, it's over the last decade. Made a lot of mistakes in the 70s and 80s about how to engage up-and-coming entrepreneurial-minded individuals, and hence we had a lot of business failures in the 90s and of course in the turn of the century here. Globally though, this has not been the case, and global businesses, especially Asian companies, have engaged the mentor program for hundreds of years actually. An interesting statistic put forward by the Harvard Business School is that 50 of the Asian companies that make the Global 200 list, all 100% of them have a formal mentorship program. And another statistic also run by Harvard Business Review over this last fall was they interviewed self-made billionaires, in North America, and every single one answered on their survey that they contribute their initial success to a mentor. What exactly constitutes a mentor? Well, for one thing, it has to they have to be a respected individual from within or without of the community. In generally speaking, in my experiences in identifying and working with mentors, they usually are highly accessible to the children in your community. So more times than not, they are there within the community. They have had a business a specialty, but more importantly, they have a life specialty. It will come up through this afternoon's presentation a couple of more times, but something that you do need to realize is that we deal with children of all backgrounds and all styles of resources, and none of those depends on how they will engage the entrepreneurial-minded activity. We deal with sometimes broken families, and sometimes there's by way of example, sometimes we have children that don't have a highly engaging or active male role model in their life. They perhaps don't have a grandfather, and perhaps their father is not in the pictures as often as or as needed as the child may like. And sometimes mentors sometimes take on a role such as that, such as a fostering type situation or a big brother, big sister role. One thing that a mentor must be able to do, it helps kids focus. As we all have children, we know that many times throughout their life, sometimes they have periods that they seem like they're able to focus even more than us as adults. But more times than not, they tend to jump ideas and jump goals and jump ideas and jump around in their concepts as they're feeling their way out in life. So it's important from for the entrepreneurial perspective for that to be able to be focused. If there's one thing that I have experienced, and this is also lent well to spoken by my peers on this also, is that youth have a highly mythical view of what it takes to run a business. Matter of fact, having counseled adults for many years also in starting businesses, I found that many adults, having never run a business before, have a lot of myths that it's important that a counselor and an advisor and of course a mentor can debunk, so that you can start making decisions based upon the facts of not only sound business concepts but also your industry model. And last but not least, a mentor must be available, and their willingness to continue with helping with the children must be unwavering, because as we all know, there are times in dealing with anyone, and especially children, that it can be a little trying on patience, and it becomes a time commitment. The roles of the mentor typically are that they must be interested in the development and success of others. And specifically for this model, they must be very much capacitated with wanting children to succeed, perhaps even have resources that they themselves did not have at their age. So it's very important. So sometimes when you're dealing with successful people, and that happens to be a lot of what you're dealing with in mentors, is sometimes they're very intellectual, and they have a position not only within their industry but within their community and perhaps even in their family that they're very strong-willed about, and sometimes that even is tempered with an ego. But a mentor must look past all of that, because and reflect on their own times and growing up in their successes, that they didn't know it all, and there was a point in life that they had to seek and ask questions, and they had to have somebody to listen to them, and it's time for them to take on that role. It's very important that they don't take on a role of just lecture and saying, this is how I used to do it, so do it that way. That never wins to a very good mentor, especially for youth. So they must be engaged in in the common principles of the Socratic method of basically asking questions that allow the child to do their own reasoning and coming up with their own answers, and of course the mentor is there to guide all through the process. Last but not least, the roles of the mentor must have, they must be able to demonstrate appropriately and time specific in relating to their own business and life skills that indeed must be exemplary. I've worked with several organizations in the past who are looking at seeking at locating these mentors, and a lot of times you'll have individuals that will volunteer to help out in the system, but they don't necessarily have the qualifications because they may not have had really a life's success model. So you really need to draw on that when you're identifying mentors. One thing with a mentor is you need to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. A mentor, no matter how enthusiastic they are in assisting with the child's development and what have you, it's very important that they be instructed and advised themselves to stick to their area of expertise and not try to get too far out of that and not take on too much of a role. For one thing, if they take on a more global role as an answer to a lot of kids' problems and that type of thing, they may find themselves having to engage with that child in a responsible way that they don't feel comfortable with, and it can be disheartening for the child when they find that out, and of course it can put some strain on that relationship. So it's very important that it be that you define the area of expertise that a mentor is capable of. And quite frankly, when it comes to questions and systems and styles outside their own areas of expertise, they just merely tell the child that will help them seek another mentor that can help them along that way. And it demonstrates to the child that even mentors need mentors from time to time. And if you're hopefully you're smiling out of the corner of your mouth at my graphic in front of your screen. In other words, do the exact opposite of how Charlie Sheen would handle it. I often say to my youth when they're working with a mentor and when I have mentors lined up, I always tell them that a good mentor doesn't want you to overstay your welcome, but they welcome your stay. And this is something that you as a community leader can guide and advise your mentors that, we will dedicate, we'll give you an idea on the time frames that we're talking about, that the time commitments that you would have to work with these kids, and the number of kids that you'd have to work with, and if you agree to work with them, we will guarantee you that you won't be burdened past that, because being a mentor definitely takes on a responsible role, and it's very easy to get emotionally tied up in these roles, and a good mentor tends to want to spend more time with the child to give them just that added extra a consultation and advice and guidance. But it's important that in order for the relationship to stay healthy and continue with the longevity and not to wear anyone down, that it be limited in some respects, but very focused on what the child needs. When you're seeking those mentors, it's very important to make a list of what those needs are. And what I recommend, and as we've talked about in previous webinars, we're assuming that you have a list of children that have some idea of what business venture that they would like to get into. And though each business venture typically has its specialties in mentors, and depending on the size of your community and your access to adult equity, is your ability to attract as many mentors with a variety of experiences as possible. But it's good to make a list of everything that the child needs, and start making an inventory of the child, whether or not they have any health issues, what kind of students that they are, both behaviorally as well as academically, to have an idea on their home life. Are they a broken family? Do they have a healthy system? Do they have siblings? Are they the youngest? Are they oldest? Are they the middle child? Because as we all know in child psychology, it tends to take a role on based upon how their family unit is. And of course, you need to make a list of all of their networks that they're involved in, to where the child do they have other equity out there, networks and equity that they can tap into, that maybe mentors can coach with, and that could be arrive from school, church, coaches with sports, and other adults involved there, and of course all the other boys and girl groups that might be out there. It's very important that you ask a mentor why they want to work with kids and what they think that they would gain out of it. Kids are just like their own kids in a variety of ways. You love them 99% of the time, but that 1% of the time they can be frustrating, they can be emotionally draining, and they can be asking more of you than maybe you're willing to give. So it's very important that a mentor be ask these questions and be very upfront with them. I've seen a lot of mentors brought into programs that they were given a presentation about all the successes that they can have and all the help that they can do with children and have all this, but they sometimes waver in their commitment after their first obstacle that might happen. And for instance, I was working with a mentor a few months ago, and her child that she was working with, her mother was found in a car wreck, and she fortunately she did not lose her life, but she was definitely incapacitated for the rest of her lifetime. And the child was having to deal with this and having to go through some of these issues as long as pursue their business idea. And the mentor wasn't really prepared to handle these type of situations, and it became very conflicted in how to address them, and didn't really know where to turn to. So it's something that it's very important that you let, especially mentors that have never worked with children before, it's very important that you engage them and let them know that there are some obstacles that come up, but that you have a network that you can bring to their thing to actually mentor the mentor when these obstacles do arise. It's very important that you be specific about the roles that you expect the mentor to take place. And again, we're assuming that you're bringing in an inexperienced a person who's never really worked with children in this role before. Continue to explain to them and show them your list. These are the areas of expertise that you're seeking, and have them look at the list and say, most people that are looking at committing a portion of their time and volunteering time, they'll be very straightforward and say, hey, I'm really good at this area. I've had a lot of experience. I've experienced this with my own children, or I went through this myself in my own life, or they'll bring some example to the table very quickly, and you'll be able to check off the list the areas that they have the most expertise in. As I mentioned earlier, it's very important, and this almost is a moniker for volunteer recruitment for any nonprofit organization, and that's to make sure that you give the expected time commitment. So often volunteers and mentors, they become burnt out because it's a lot more time consuming than they considered. If you firmly believe that it's going to take 20 to 30 hours a week or a month that they need to commit to child mentoring, need to be very upfront with that. I would be hesitant to say that if somebody knew they had to commit that much, that they would actually volunteer for your program. But it's very important that you be very accurate in what you expect the time commitment to be. And typically it's 20, 30 minutes a week, something like that is what most mentoring type relationships require of their time, and a lot of people have that available to them. It's important if you have any housekeeping rules. So if your organization has an established youth entrepreneurship program, if you have some guidelines, if you have a board that has to be satisfied, if you have other volunteers involved with the program, or if you have other mentors that you're putting this program together with. It's make sure that the mentor that you're bringing into the program is aware of all these housekeeping rules, so that so nothing shocks them when they come into the program. It's very important that you let them know the number of kids that will be not necessarily assigned with them, but they would have access to. And it's important that you give them, the basics of their profiles and what those children's goals are, so that they can have an idea on, where to start from, so that they don't have to start from scratch in learning all the background of the children. Make sure that they, all the concerns, as I mentioned, of dealing with children, maybe that those are addressed, and we'll talk about those here directly. And then also assure them that you're going to give them timely feedback. Kids nowadays, it's been a degradation in our communication skills over the last couple of decades, but children have a hard time collectively expressing how they feel to adults about situations, and if things are working, if they're not working, whether they feel that it's being effective, whether they're growing the situation, whether they even like the person or not. It tends to be that we find that children just either don't come back to the program, or they become very disenfranchised with being attentive with when they're engaged, and that becomes a real issue also. So it's very important that the program director, the nonprofit organization, or whoever that might be leading this particular program, a school system per se, it's very important that director be engaged with not only the children but also give timely feedback to the mentor, so that they know what they're doing is beneficial. It's very important that you do background checks on mentors. If you're a nonprofit organization, you have a responsibility not only to your community, to your board, but more specifically to the letter of the law and the children and parents that are engaged with your program, that people that they're engaging with are responsible individuals, and they have always been responsible individuals. You can typically work with your local police force. If you haven't done this before, there's usually a detective within a county, typically in rural. But there's always ways of getting background checks. If you have them done formally, they usually range anywhere from $30 to $75, just depending on who's doing it and the depth of the background check. But make sure that individuals are checked for felonies. Bankruptcies too, even though that's not I would not say that is a prerequisite for precluding somebody from assisting, but it's very important that that be disclosed. And the reason being is, and we've talked about this in previous webinars, but to be an entrepreneur instead of just self-employed is typically an individual goes through a series of businesses in their lifetime, and they're constantly looking for a new venture to get into and that type of thing. And sometimes the ventures, there are some that are not as successful as others. We can even look at one of the more famous entrepreneurs like Donald Trump. With getting into double digits now in bankruptcies that he's had throughout his career, and continues to be a very wealthy individual and continues to pursue new business ventures all the time. We definitely probably would not turn away Mr. Trump from mentoring any children out there, but it's very important, and I'm sure that even in his work with children would explain some of the failures that he had, and it uses it as an educational purpose. Of course, last but not least, there's been any drug, alcohol related issues or domestic crimes. The main thing with this is this becomes very program specific. You have to make a decision if any of these, if the background check becomes negative in any way whatsoever. It's very important that the organization make a decision, but I would also I don't aim to give legal advice here at all. So I would expect you to seek advice of an attorney in this regard. But if you do choose to go with somebody in your mentoring aspect that has not sufficiently passed a background check, I would advise that the parents and of course all the children be made aware of these things. So you need to make that clear to a mentor that if there's any of these things in their background, they probably should be denied access to children. Okay. Last but not least, do a thumbnail check of the individual's resume, especially if they've had a varied background or if they haven't always lived within the community in which you are targeting. It's just important that that they have an exemplary business background, or at least they have a specialty in their background, and they've always had a continued success through their career, or at least a pattern of growth inside that career. These are some tools that we often recommend to mentors, and they need to be aware of this going into this, and that these are some things that should be a consideration. It's always good practice to have a parent, guardian, or at a minimum another adult present anytime there's any counseling sessions with the child. Though, is this always important, and does it always matter? No, we definitely, I can list several times when that hasn't the case, and I can even point to times in my history in working with youth entrepreneurs that just was not feasible. But it's always a good policy to try and have that available as often as possible. Another good process is also canceling groups. Maybe have 2, 3, 4, 5 children in a room, or just a group of individuals in a room anytime that you're doing counseling visits or mentoring sessions. It just definitely is a lot safer for everybody in that regard. No doubt that we still use our phones for phone conversation, though we tend to use them more for the multimedia aspects now, the texting, the Facebooking, the emails, and what have you. But the phone conversations that do take place, try to keep those at less than 5 minutes, especially if there's only a child on the other end of the line. Just don't want to engage them for any longer than that, just so that you can always help ensure that there wasn't, any conversation that was off the topic of mentoring. Text messaging, email, voicemail, Facebook, they're great tools if you use them appropriately. Not only can you use those at your leisure and get points across very quickly, but it also gives you a record of conversation, so it's very important there. I use Skype and also GoToMeeting. Skype, of course, being a free service, GoToMeeting being a paid-for service. But I use those services continually in working with not only adult clients, but I use those specifically with youth entrepreneurs. And it's just a great way of engaging in technology, which they really like that it's really fun for them. Skype, of course, by its free nature, doesn't have the ability to record, but I would suggest, and this is something that I do on a very regular basis, any Skype conversation, because they can be rather lengthy from time to time, sometimes an hour or better at time. I download a Skype recorder. I have been told, I think, that there's some free ones out there. I know this Power Gramo that I've recommended here. I think it's like $20 one-time fee. It's very, very inexpensive, but you can record all the Skype conversations so that you would have a record of it. And of course, in those times, and they will happen quite often. Actually, you'll have to do one-on-one meetings with your children. Try to make it as in a public place as possible. I recommend that if the program is championed by a nonprofit group, to try to host meetings at their facility. If you host it at your business per se, just make sure it's in a front lobby or where there's a traffic area. Be very cautious of any closed-door meeting at any location with a child on an individual basis. It's very important that mentors be given feedback. In doing surveys and talking with mentors, matter of fact, I worked with a community not too long ago that they were seeking mentors, and they gave me a list of people to call on, and it was all people that in the community that had worked with in this kind of setting before. I said, "Oh, great! They've already got experience. This will be wonderful." went to call on them, and they were just most hesitant to give me positive feedback and saying that they would join in the mentorship program. They basically had been kind of a little bit burnt out. They said they spent a lot of hours with the children, and they didn't know whatever happened to them. They did summer programs, and once the program concluded, the children went back to school, grew up. The summer program was not continued the next summer. Just it seemed like a lot of work, and the mentors really did not know if they had been successful, and just really didn't want to be a part of something that they just weren't getting anything out of, because they certainly aren't getting a paycheck, and they certainly aren't getting any type of recognition that is worth their time. So it's very important to give feedback. I recommend that you give a formal report on each of the children's success, or on their updates quarterly. It can be just a one-page summary or one-page report. It doesn't have to be detailed, just bulleted as to what the child is up to, and specifically anything that the child has pointed out that the mentor guided them in. That really gives them a good feeling. An email summary monthly, and more if you've got time, just to give them an update. Hey, the child will be there, next week. He's really going on about how much you helped him last week. Just any little thing like that really gives a great a boost to their ability to want to continue with the program. And above all, make sure that you set times at least once a month, 15 minutes or more. Don't take up a lot of their time, but really go in and let them know that verbally what's going on, but do it more as a listening process to say, hey, how's this working out for you? Do you like the child? Do you feel comfortable in the child you have? Have you experienced any problems with them, their parents, the scheduling, their work, advice, their behavior? Just any little thing like that that may not come out in a written document, but it definitely comes out verbally. Just remember that a mentor returns twofold each success. A mentor wants to look at the progress that the child is making, and they like to be sought out by the child seeking more advice. In other words, they want to know that the child is seeking their help, and they don't have to set the agenda all the time. It really gives an adult, a mentor, a real good feeling to know that they are wanted, know that they're needed, and know that their advice is being taken. The key with mentor recognition is make it very kid-driven. Kids forget to say thank you, but when they do, an adult almost always recognizes that. And I've seen many mentors almost feel ashamed because they get very emotionally tied to the children. They get very responsible with what they're doing. I've seen mentors almost shamed when they're publicly recognized by other adults. They take it on as almost as their duty to do, and they don't feel like they should be recognized, because if it's done appropriately, the child's given them a very meaningful hug that says, hey, thank you, you really helped me along in life. And those are the type of things that mentors are looking for to really get them moving and thinking about how to help that next child out there. It's very important that the attainment of goals be very measurable, and list those accomplishments out to date that have resulted from the mentorship, and give those in a variety of ways. If nothing else, pop in on their Facebook page and publicly put on their walls, say, your child was just so happy with all that you did for them the other day. It's meant so much to our program. Those type of things, those type of recognitions mean so much to everyone. If you're going to do public recognition, have the kids put together the program. I can give an example of a program not too far from me, living in Southern Illinois, that the children put on a little play, and they took on the roles of their mentors, and they each played the part of their mentor, and put on a little 15-20-minute play and invited all the mentors and, of course, the public to see. It was very well received. It was very touching. It was very funny. It meant so much to everyone in attendance. So it's just leave it up to the kids to come up with a program that they think would really recognize all the hard work that's been given to them. Follow up with recruitment for other mentors. If there's one aspect that I see many mentors falling out of the program with, is that they feel that that they're doing this all by themselves. They look upon a public program and they see that the youth entrepreneurship program is up and running. They see there's only one, two, maybe three mentors out there doing all of the work and handling all of the kids' needs. It can be frustrating with them over time, and it's very important that the program that's leading the youth entrepreneurship program have some sort of a volunteer / mentor recruitment program to bring in a number, and set that as a goal, as a goal of so many mentors that you want to bring in each year. And last but not least, always remember that once you get the commitment from a mentor to be involved, and if you give them good feedback and give them good reporting and you do your part to administrate the program effectively, that a mentor will take on great responsibility. They will get a thumbs up from not only you and the community, but most importantly, they'll get a thumbs up from the children that they helped. Thank you for joining us for the presentation today. Our next presentation on community youth entrepreneurship will be entitled Kids Need Variety. The topic will be showing how to keep kids engaged in youth entrepreneurship programs from using a variety of experiences and teaching and instruction and type systems, as well as it helps give you ideas of how to engage children that have different learning styles in the program. That program will be on July the 24th. It'll be 1:30 Central Time. Just remember that if you can't go ahead and sign up for the webinar. It is free. If for some reason you can't make it, you will be emailed a link so that you can view it at your own leisure in the future. At this point, I would like to open it up for questions. You can either type in your question or feel free to raise your hand. I will turn on your microphone or your phone, whichever you have, and we'll hear your question. Okay, if there are no questions at this time, I will conclude today's webinar. Feel free to contact me at the information that is on your screen at your leisure. I always look forward to talking about this topic and other topics that may be out there regarding rural development of communities and economic development prospects. Also tune in for other webinars that my partner is doing on historic revitalization of downtown development. Thank you and have a wonderful day.